All right, let's talk about what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday we talked about commerce in the Constitution. Um, Yesterday we talked about Noah, Ham, and Canaan. All right, Noah is the father of Ham. Ham lived a life of perverseness. As a result of his perversion, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan. Canaan, as a result of being under a curse, created a nation of curses or people who are cursed. And so these people are called the Canaanites. The Canaanites became proficient in excelling in creating what we now know to be commercial law, or more appropriately termed, the law merchant. Okay, so the law merchant would be the origin or the rightful definition of commerce and commercial law. All right, commercial law comes from the Canaanites, who and then were so hated they changed their name to the Phoenicians. Okay, and then these Phoenicians continued their merchant practices. All right. Um, so without the title of Phoenician and Canaanite, they would be called the merchants. So the merchants spread their practices of what they call intercourse, negotiation, trade, exchange. All of these rules and practices were developed by these people called the merchants. And as a result, they spread their practices from Egypt, where Egypt flourished in the world of commerce. Then they changed their name to Phoenicians, and then they spread their practices to Babylon. And then now they're just called merchants, or anybody who participates in these practices are just called merchants, and they primarily are influenced from the world of Rome or the Roman Empire. All right. These merchants were developing their practices along the Mediterranean Sea. The Mediterranean Sea, if you go to Google Maps and go to the Mediterranean Sea, well, you have Europe, Asia, and Africa around this sea. And there, these Phoenicians dominated what they call international sea trade. Why? Why was it called international? Because there was three different continents right there. It is backwards. Thank you for saying that. I mean, not that you can see it anyway, but yes, you're right. It does help. It does help when you can get a little peek. Uh, but so along the Mediterranean Sea, you have Europe, Asia, Africa on this one body of water. There, from they had contracts. These Phoenicians had contracts with all these different nations. All right, so you can go to Google Maps, look at all the nations. They got, I mean, every nation from Africa, Asia, and Europe. Right? They created contracts with these different nations, and they developed what they would call maritime sea trade, or what is now known as commerce. All right, and how did they do that? They used ships to take things from one, I'll just say continent to blanket it, from one continent to the other. And as a result, they termed this merchants. All right, this is all developed by the Phoenicians, who were called the Canaanites. They're the same group of people, Phoenicians. Now they just are merchants. All right. So Europe, Asia, Africa, and they practice this thing called merchants. What is that? What is a merchant? Mer means sea. What sea? The Mediterranean Sea, where they develop these international relationships. All right, and through there they use what they call incantations or enchantments to persuade people, to invigorate people into participating in commercial activities. And as a result, there is an entire reality that people are surrounded by called commerce. And in the U.S. Constitution, it says that the feds have the power to regulate commerce. And after we got through talking about all the different definitions of merchant and commerce, from the sea to ships to traffic to intercourse to navigation. In the United States Constitution, there's only one type of court that can hear issues of commerce. One of the definitions from a business law book that I read yesterday said that as the development of commercial law, anytime you would hear the phrase that is related to, they said, the law of agency, sales, insurance, bankruptcy, negotiable instruments, stoppage in transit, liens, all of these things are under the subject of commerce or merchant law. So anytime anything is related to any of those subtopics, what subtopics? Bankruptcy, banking, liens, insurance, any type of insurance is under commerce. Any type of principle in agency is under commerce. That is the law of commerce. It is under the definition of commerce. Anything related to traffic, which would be licensing or cargo or being a passenger, all of that is under the definition or the subject matter of commerce. And as I ended the subject yesterday, there's only one type of court that can hear issues of commerce. Because Article 1 uses the phrase commerce 2 times. They say they have the power to regulate commerce, and then they said there would be no preference given to the regulation of commerce. And then you get to Article 3, and they talk about the different types of cases that they can hear. They said they got a case about law, they got a case about equity, they got a case about treaties and laws under the Constitution and laws of the United States. And then they got this thing called admiralty and maritime jurisdiction. Then they got laws related to, they got issues and cases related to citizenship and to different land grants. And then you got criminal law in the Constitution. They say, okay, well, these are the type of cases that we can hear. But they don't ever mention the phrase commerce in this list of types of cases that they can hear. Why? Okay, well, there's only one type of court that can hear issues of admiralty, and that is, or issues of commerce, and that is an admiralty court or an admiralty and maritime court. So tonight, we're going to go over just a brief overview what admiralty is in the United States Constitution. So, yeah. So that's what we talked about yesterday.